brief introduction, these webinars are jointly organized as a clustering activity by the Horizon-funded projects ALFAwetlands, Restore for Seas, REWET, and Wet Horizons. So welcome everyone. My name is Maria Cámara, and I am the Communication and Dissemination Manager from the REWET project. And today I will be moderating this webinar. As a brief recap, last month we held our first session, which covered the topic of greenhouse gases fluxure measurement and monitoring. In case you miss it, it is available in our project websites, so you can go and see it. And today we're going to take a big shift and dive into the social aspect of wetland restoration. We have very interesting presentations from researchers in our projects. And today we will have three main speakers. We have Annika Tienhaara from ALFAwetlands, Patrick Graf from REWET, and also Lorenzo Pugliese from Wet Horizons. Okay, so before we go into the session, let me first go over some of the webinar rules. As you know from the registration form, this session will be recorded and will be available for the audience afterwards in the sister project communication channels. Please keep your microphones muted unless you're invited to speak. Use the chat box to post your questions and comments, and you can do this during the presentation. And then after each of the presentation, we will open the Q&A sessions, and the speakers will answer them then. And if you have any technical issues, please contact us privately. So, among other activities that the sister projects are jointly working on, we have our wetland restoration LinkedIn group, which is managed by the communication leaders of the sister projects. This space is meant for wetland restoration exchanges between researchers, practitioners, and other stakeholders. There is automatic acceptance, but if you cannot join, please just let us know, and we will be more than happy to help you and add you to the group. So after this, let me go briefly over the agenda for today. Right now, we're going through the introduction, which has been done by me. Afterwards, we will have a presentation by Annika Tienhaara from ALFAwetlands. And then Patrick Graf will present from REWET. And finally, Lorenzo Pugliese from Wet Horizons will close up the presentations. After that, we will wrap up the session and we will make the next session announcement and also some insights from the final feedback questionnaire. So let's start with the first presentation. I will introduce our speaker. Annika is a research scientist and she has a strong expertise in the economic valuation of environmental benefits with emphasis on stated preference methods. Her recent studies have focused on citizens and farmers' preferences for various ecosystem services. So Annika, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Maria. So my name is Annika Tienhaara and I work in Natural Resources Institute in Finland. And I'm part of the ALFAwetlands project. I work in work package 5, that is about the economic and social impacts of wetland restoration. And today I'm going to present one part of our study. It's about valuing wetland restoration. So we are looking at citizens' preferences about wetland restoration across 6 EU countries. And we are using a choice experiment method to do this. Let's see if I can. Yes, it works. Okay, so there are many work packages in our project. There's different kinds of tasks about mapping wetlands and co-creation, and then doing actual measurements about the effects of wetland restoration and modeling and scenario work. But as I said, today I'm focusing on these economic and social impacts of wetland restoration. That's a part of work package 5, where I work in this project. And in this work package, we are looking both about the citizens' perceptions and landowner perceptions. But the landowner perceptions are just coming next year. So now I'm focusing on this citizen perceptions part. So what was our objective in our task? So we wanted to look about citizens' perceptions about wetlands and wetland restoration, and examine what is their acceptance of this restoration. And we aim to understand how people value different wetland restoration benefits. So wetlands provide different kind of ecosystem services, and they have benefits. So how people value these different benefits. So in this project, we have implemented this national level citizen survey, and this was done in 6 countries, in Austria, Estonia, Finland, Latvia, Spain, and Sweden. And our survey was quite large. It was quite a long survey, and there were several key themes in this survey. So we asked respondents' knowledge about wetlands, how they use wetlands, how often, and what they do there. We also asked about the perceived importance of the different ecosystem services that wetlands provide, and also attitudes towards wetlands and their restoration. And then we had this valuation component that was this choice experiment to assess these perceived benefits and to examine the value related to the restoration. And the survey ended with the standard socio-demographic questions. So just a couple of words about this choice experiment method. So because I don't know if it's familiar to everyone. So this is one of the stated preference methods that can be used or is typically used in, for example, in environmental economics to examine the value of such things that do not have market values. So we have these non-market goods that do not have values reflected in the markets, so we need special evaluation techniques to examine their value. So choice experiment can be used to capture the preferences and willingness to pay for different kinds of goods, services, or policy changes that do not have this actual market price. And in this method, the respondents are asked to choose between different hypothetical alternatives. And these alternatives typically have some kind of status quo or either an opt-out option. For example, in our case, we have this kind of like current development as a status quo, and then 2 different kinds of restoration programs as alternatives. And these different alternatives, they are described by a limited number of attributes. So we are describing these different alternatives with these different attributes. For example, in our case, we have these different kinds of benefits that restoration would have. So for example, the effect on biodiversity or the effect on climate changes. So these are these attributes. And then there's also cost attribute included so that we are able to examine the willingness to pay. So the respondents are asked to choose between these alternatives, what is their preferred alternative, and they have to make these trade-offs between the alternatives because these levels of the attributes in each alternative, they differ. So there is no single alternative that would be best in like regarding all of the attributes. So there's no like, this is clearly the best option. So they have to make trade-offs between these different attributes and also the cost. And based on this, their choices, we can model their preferences. And the number of attributes is quite limited because the more you add the attributes, the more complex the choice task becomes. And it becomes really difficult to answer if you have like 10 different attributes. And each respondent completes multiple of these choice sets. And as I said, that by analyzing the pattern of their choices, we can estimate the relative importance of these different attributes and the trade-offs respondents are willing to make. For the analysis, we have used latent class model because we are able to identify groups of respondents with similar preferences, and it helps to reveal these hidden segments. So we are better understanding these diverse opinions that respondents have. We had 2 pilot studies to test the questionnaire, as well as to optimize the design of the choice experiment. And we piloted the study in the spring of this year, actually a couple of times. And then the final data collection happened in April and May this year. And altogether, we got a bit over 1,000 responses from each country. And in the final data collection, we had a bit over 800 respondents per country. So what was our valuation scenario? So we were presenting them this hypothetical program, restoration program, that would restore 30% of the degraded wetlands. And we stated that the restoration would occur both on state-owned land and voluntarily on private lands. And the restoration measures mentioned in the survey, they included, for example, converting agricultural peatlands back to wetlands, restoring drained forested wetlands, and rehabilitating former peat production areas. We stated that this restoration would have no negative impact on food security, and also said that some areas may remain in low impact productive use, for example, in polyculture. And the benefits were said to begin to appear within a few years, but we said that this full impact of this restoration would take several decades. And in our choice tasks, there were 3 alternatives, as I said. So there's this no restoration option that means that we continue in a current path. So environment continues to degrade, and there would be no direct additional cost to the respondents related to this option. And then 2 alternative restoration programs that had varying benefits, varying environmental benefits, and then also a cost related to this. And the cost was stated to be increase in income tax for the next 10 years. Okay, and then doesn't move. Let's see. Okay. So what environmental impacts we had as the attributes? So we had the occurrence of floods, the occurrence of droughts, then biodiversity as the share of threatened wetland species. Then there was water quality as the share of degraded surface waters, and climate impact as the change in wetland greenhouse gas emissions. So here's an example of a choice task. So what we are showing here to the respondents is the state of the environment in 2055, so in 30 years. So on the left-hand side, there's the environmental impact, so the attributes, and then there's the alternatives, so no restoration program and 2 differing restoration programs. And the respondents were asked to choose which option they prefer. And as I said, they had to make these comparisons and trade-offs between these different alternatives. So some results. We found 4 different respondent classes. So the first one was the biggest. So over half of the respondents were in this pro-environment class. So this class had really strong preference for restoration, and all of these environmental attributes they had positive and significant coefficients. So these respondents really appreciated these environmental improvements. But this class had really low sensitivity to cost attribute. So the cost attribute was significant, but it was really low, the coefficient. So this means that when we calculate the willingness to pay estimates, they were really high for all of these improvements. So they ranged from like 400 euros to over 1,000 euros across attributes. So these are really high. So I believe that these respondents, they were more focusing on this, like trying to show that they want these environmental improvements made even like without regards to the cost. So they were really like showing strong preference for restoration and improvements in the environment. The second class, I named these disengaged skeptics. They were 18% of the respondents. And these respondents, they mostly had non-significant or even negative coefficients. But these respondents, however, didn't show a strong preference for the current development either. So they had this low or even negative willingness to pay for these environmental impacts or these improvements, and but there were only few of these significant values. And the results, they seem that this group would have, it might have respondents that had difficulties to understand the choice experiment task, or other could be explanation that they are kind of like skeptic that these kind of impacts would actually happen if this program would be implemented. The third class, they were these cost sensitives, almost 18% also. These respondents, they had significant support, especially for water quality improvements and emission reductions. And they were highly sensitive to the cost attribute as well. So they had much more moderate willingness to pay for these specific environmental improvements. So their willingness to pay range between 70 to 48 euros. So it seems much more realistic compared to the first class. And the final class was this non-supporters, almost 9%. And these respondents had clear preference for no restoration. So they choose the no restoration option quite often. So they didn't show significant support or opposition to most environmental improvements. So these other attributes or these environmental attributes didn't have much of an effect to their choices. So they were just like choosing this no restoration option. So their behavior suggests a really strong resistance to change and really strong resistance to restoration measures. So roughly 3/4 of the respondents in our sample, they supported the restoration, and 1/4 either like strictly opposes or at least seems kind of skeptical. So some conclusions. So this was quite a large scale of citizen survey across 6 European countries. And we found these diverse preferences regarding wetlands and their restoration. And these results, they show really strong support for wetland restoration programs, as 3/4 really supported the restoration. But there are still some respondents that do not support restoration, especially these strict opposers that do not support the restoration, even if it has environmental benefits. And currently, we're analyzing the class membership models to examine what type of, if there are some kind of like socio-demographic variables that are linked to the class membership. And we are looking at the regional variations in preferences also in more detail. So we are looking at the country-specific models, but that's currently ongoing, that work. Okay. Well, that was all about the survey and the choice experiment. And here are some links if you're interested more in ALFAwetland project.
Thank you, Annika, for your presentation. Very interesting results. Can't wait to see the final results. So now we have few time actually for questions and answers. And we have one question in the chat. The question, Annika, is what stakeholder groups were you focusing on? And from my own experiences, I know that it is quite challenging to reach out some stakeholders groups such as landowners. Did you also experience these challenges? And if so, how did you manage them?
Okay, so this survey was solely on citizens. So we were aiming for representative national citizen samples. So here we were not focusing on, for example, the landowners, but I really recognize the problem of reaching these landowner groups, because now we are working with the the landowner survey, and there is the really difficult to actually reach not just landowners but wetland owners. So that's a really difficult task to do. But in this survey that I just presented, we had these national citizen samples, and they were recruited from this Bilendi, which is this polling company, and their internet panel. So we used them to contact the respondents.
Thank you. Thank you, Annika. So we are a bit, we're on time, just on time.
Okay.
So I will move on to our next speaker.
Thank you.
With Thank you, Annika. Thank you. So we will move to our next presentation. Our second speaker is Patrick Graf. Patrick is a research associate at the Behavioral Economics and Engineering Research Center at the Catholic University of Leuven. His research focuses on human behavior related to nature-based solutions and sustainable decision making. So, Patrick, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you, Maria, for introducing me to the audience. So yeah, I'm Patrick. I'm currently research associate at the Behavioral Economics and Engineering Research Center at KU Leuven, Belgian University. And I'm involved in the REWET project. That's a very great, lovely project with a lot of great work and great colleagues, I have to say. But I'm not here to tell you about the great people and the project as such. No, the aim of my presentation today is to introduce the social monitor to you, the thing we have been working on throughout the project and also along the project. And by the way, my apologies if I may be coughing from time to time. However, I'm still recovering a bit from the flu. But I'm here and I will tell you about the social monitor. Let's see. Yeah, so first of all, so initially we called it social monitor. However, we wanted our instrument to have a name that was maybe clearer and maybe easier to remember. So we called it SOMER in the end, which is short for Social Monitor for Ecosystem Restoration. But before telling you more about the structure of SOMER, let us take a few steps, or let us take a few steps back, actually, and look at the necessity for such an instrument. Because the question is, okay, you have developed a social monitor, but why might this kind of instrument be relevant? Why is it necessary to have such a thing? Okay, here it is. Yes. So the significance of specific ecosystems and their restoration, and especially wetlands, since we are all in the wetlands, for climate mitigation and also the sustainability of local communities. Well, this is all acknowledged by, as we know, policymakers, and it is also reflected in the inclusion of ecosystem restorations as priorities within policy frameworks. Just to name a few, we have the UN 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, we have the EU's 2030 Biodiversity Strategy, very recently example is the EU's Nature Restoration Regulation, and so on and so on. But on top of that, and in this context, also Horizon Europe calls, they really emphasize the necessity to include citizens' views in the restoration projects to support engagement, but also policy learning. So this highlights the importance and the necessity of having such an instrument. And when we dived into the literature, we found quite some tools that were available for measuring social acceptance. However, all of these tools were either context or place-based, purely conceptual, or they were process-oriented participatory planning tools, so specifically developed for some specific research groups in some parts of Europe or in the world. So these limitations do not allow for comparability across cases, regions, or time. But if we want to measure, monitor, and compare social acceptance of wetland restoration across cases, regions, time, a standardized instrument is necessary. And to address this gap, we developed SOMER, so our social monitor, or to put it more concretely, a standardized and versatile modular instrument that is designed to gauge social acceptance of wetland restoration. Yes, so, well, given the broad concept of social acceptance, we treated social acceptance as a multidimensional construct and operationalized it using three facets. First of all, nature connectedness. Secondly, perceptions and attitudes towards climate change. And thirdly, perceived costs and benefits of wetland conservation or restoration for local communities. And these facets form then the modules of our social monitor, the SOMER instrument. The first two facets are broader in scope, if we talk about scope. So nature connectedness may shape, for example, perceived benefits, while perceptions and attitudes toward climate change, they may influence perceived costs for stakeholders. Or maybe put it differently, more specifically, so feeling connected to nature may increase benefits or perceived benefits, whereas perceiving climate change as a serious threat may make restoration appear more necessary and perceived trade-offs more acceptable. And then the third facet is narrower in scope, and it addresses both the perceived costs and benefits for the stakeholders. Then a bit more specific about our three facets. So, because you could wonder, okay, there are a lot of ways to approach social acceptance, but why did you then include nature connectedness and the climate change perceptions, attitudes? What is the rationale actually? First of all, nature connectedness. Humans are part of the socio-ecological system, and emotional bonds with nature play a fundamental role in pro-environmental attitudes and concern. Or how can I put it differently? So individuals, they are inherently part of the natural world because they are born in nature, living by its rules, and they are fundamentally dependent on ecological processes. So in environmental psychology, for example, research also emphasizes that individuals' emotional and personal connection to nature is a key driver of pro-environmental attitudes and behavior. Then if we look at the second facet, so the climate change perceptions and attitudes, people perceive climate change in many different ways, as we know, shaped by their beliefs, emotions, personal interpretations, and so on. And these perceptions then inform climate change attitudes, which include how people judge the issue, what they believe causes it, and how concerned they are about its impacts. And in this context, research has shown that, for example, also cognitive beliefs like perceived threat often influence policy support more often, actually, than emotional concern. Then about the third facet, so perceived costs and benefits. So social acceptance is strongly influenced by how people evaluate the distribution of benefits and burdens associated with environmental measures. So this just as a brief background. And maybe this illustration makes it a bit more clear how then the SOMER, the social monitor we have developed, is kind of structured with this framework here. So it illustrates that social acceptance, based on how we defined it, is a multidimensional concept composed of these three facets I just explained. And it shows how social acceptance in the restoration context can be assessed across the temporal, contextual, and spatial dimension. So, of course, then you have like the conceptual basis, but we also wanted to go a step further and know, okay, Of course, there are different ways to define social acceptance, different facets we could have been using. So we also wanted to see, or we also wanted to validate, I must say, the SOMA instrument and demonstrate its practical value. So we examined SOMA's internal structure to verify that the instrument works as intended, namely that these three facets, like nature connectedness, capture a coherent and multidimensional concept of social acceptance. And for this, we carried out an empirical study in the Netherlands. And this study included 11 Dutch wetlands, all of them Ramsar sites, and also including one of the wetlands was the REWET Open Lab number 1, that is located in, well, the mid-north of the Netherlands, the Weerribben. And just very briefly, I won't go into details, but for this we used the regression analysis, or more specifically the ordinal logistic regression with a multi-level model in which data was then grouped into 4 distinct levels. And here's just a map to illustrate it very nicely where were these wetlands then located. So all of these 11 wetlands in the Netherlands. Yes, and then just some concluding remarks. It's a pity due to time constraints, I won't go into the results in detail today. However, our findings suggest actually that nature connectedness, climate change perceptions, attitudes, and also the perceived costs and benefits capture relevant dimensions of social acceptance, supporting their inclusion in SOMA, which is good, I think. And then we have a scientific perspective. So from a scientific perspective, SOMA addresses a key gap in existing research by offering a standardized and modular instrument for which current tools do not allow the systematic comparison of social acceptance across time, context, and place. So as a result, SOMA can be used to assess how social acceptance evolves across different stages of restoration. Then we also have the policy perspective, and from that perspective, SOMA can help assessing the social feasibility of restoration policies. Yeah, so if you want to know more about it or you want to have a chat, feel free to reach out to me at any time. But for now, that's it. And I hope I'm still within the time frame. Thank you.
Thank you, Patrick. Yes, you're in the time frame. Thank you very much for your presentation. I think it is quite interesting to talk about the importance of the standardization of the social aspect. We have standards in many other areas, but not in social acceptance. It is time, we still have a couple minutes, so if you have questions for Patrick, you can write them down in the chat. I will start with the first question, and the question is why there is a need for a standardized assessment in social acceptance, Patrick?
Yes, that's a good question, and also because this work we also handed in, and this was also covered by the reviewers. But the answer to this is quite simple. Well, ecosystem restoration becomes a growing policy priority among decision makers as they increasingly require comparable standardized insights into public support and stakeholder perspectives. And that is something these context-specific instruments I briefly talked about cannot deliver. So there's really a need for like a standardized instrument which can be used actually to measure social acceptance in the restoration context.
Thank you, Patrick. We have another question in the chat. The question is, which stakeholders groups did you reach at those wetlands? And if you did study other REWET countries?
Okay, let me maybe first start with the first 10. So I also see it in the chat. First of all, thank you for the question. Always nice to have people thinking along and having questions. Well, initially we wanted to reach out to the stakeholders ourselves, but quite soon we figured out that's a bit challenging due to, because not all stakeholders are quite eager to participate. So in the end, for the empirical study, we collaborated with a research panel provider, so research company providing us with a representative sample for the Netherlands. And then for now, we only carried out the study in the Netherlands, but we are eager to also apply it to different wetland contexts, also in different countries. This is also one of the objectives, or one of the things we highlight with the social monitor. It's not strictly for the Dutch context, but of course you can use it in any other context, like in Austria or Belgium or wherever. And this should be one of the strengths, actually, of the SOMER instrument.
Thank you, Patrick. I think we are now out of time. Good luck with the rest of the work. I'm sure it will go great.
Thank you.
Now let's move on to our next speaker, Lorenzo. Lorenzo is an environmental engineer and scientist at Aarhus University, whose research focuses on optimizing nutrient removal and understanding biogeochemical processes in natural and engineered systems. In recent years, Lorenzo has expanded this work to explore wetland systems, and he also leads citizen activities and engage local communities in environmental monitoring. Lorenzo, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Maria, for the introduction, and good morning, everyone. So today, my presentation focuses on the citizens' activities we are carrying out in the Wet Horizons project. So, yes, very quickly, a small introduction about the project itself. Here is the link to the web page, which I invite you all to have a look at, because there is lots of interesting content. The project is AU project. It was started 3 years ago, and now we are into the last year of the project. And it gathers people from different organizations, and these organizations are located in different European countries. But what do we do? What is the main aim for the project broadly? So we aim to improve wetland knowledge. And additionally, we aim to develop some tools which will enhance the protection and the restoration of the European wetlands. So overall, there is lots of focus on climate and biodiversity. So in the project, we bring together people with different expertises with the final goal of improving the wetland knowledge. Among these people, we have wetland and peatland experts, we have biomodelers, and also policy analysts. So a very broad group. In the project, we collect previously produced data, so available data. So there is a lot of work on data mining and data harmonization, but we also are producing new data in the project for selected catchments. And regarding this data, there is also an important component on citizen science. The tools, is the final outcome, the main outcome of the project. And this will be very helpful to fast track restoration across Europe. Now, after this very brief overview of the project, I think we will dive in more into the citizen-based activity. So we are all aware that wetland restoration is scaling up rapidly in order to support climate mitigation, but also biodiversity and ecosystem resilience. However, there is a monitoring gap, and this is due to the fact that often it is difficult to evaluate the success of the restoration effort. Why is this? This is because the restoration is generally slow, and then it follows the non-linear ecology recovery pattern. And also what is available, monitoring data are often for a short term, and there is an expert-led monitoring misalignment with what is then the ecosystem timescale. So what we are missing currently, it's often some early warning signals about ecological drift, and also in general some opportunities for engaging and involving the public. So overall, if you have to sum up about these challenges, we can say that there is a need for a more holistic monitoring approach, and specifically we need to consider some long-term monitoring, but also we need to consider the monitoring approach to be more adaptive and also socially embedded. Citizens can be very helpful in filling in this monitoring gap, but of course the contribution can be of different levels. So the first crucial step is to simply engage with some easy tools. This could be, for example, some interactive quizzes, which can be used at restoration sites, and then allow citizens to access some content and get some feedback about maybe what they are observing in this restoration sites. And the focus can be, of course, very broad, can be on hydrology, on carbon storage, or other aspects. A further step would be to use citizen science, which strictly speaking really can complement monitoring. And in this way, we can provide a larger spatial and temporal coverage. At the same time, increase also among the citizens this ecological awareness and stewardship. So all these activities can contribute to build on environmental literacy, and also create a more robust connection between the visitors and the restored wetlands. Further, such an approach can prepare the ground for even deeper citizen participation. In Wet Horizons, we have activities running at 3 pilot sites. One is in Germany at Zarnikov, one is in Finland, the Tolonsvuo National Park. Both at these 2 pilots, we have some educational, mainly educational activities. And then we have a third pilot site in Denmark at Lille Vildmose, where we have some citizen science platforms. So the activities running in Germany and in Finland are very similar to each other. There we have some quizzes, and the aim of these quizzes is basically to transfer some scientific knowledge in a playful and interactive way, and engage with audiences which we would otherwise not be able to reach. And in this way, we present ecological concepts in a more enjoyable way. We increase curiosity and also awareness among specific audiences. And of course, we give more visibility to the project. So how can visitors participate in these quizzes? So basically, along the walkable paths, there are some signs with QR codes. So visitors can access the quiz by scanning the QR code. And then the quiz is available always in the local language, but also in English, and focuses on primarily on hydrology, carbon storage, greenhouse gases, and climate resilience. And after they have answered, the participants, they receive a quick feedback, which we believe supports some site-based learning. This activity has been running since the summer. So far, we have collected, you can see in this screenshot, 132 answers, and the average score was 66%, which also indicates that the participants had more than sufficient knowledge about the role of wetlands. At the third pilot site, which is located in Denmark, we do some citizen science. Why we chose this place? Because it's largest protected peatland area. It's a bog in Denmark. And we have created there two platforms. One is in the open bog area, which is accessible all year round, and one is located inside the visitor center. So it's a more controlled environment in that case, and it's only open during the opening season of the center. And yeah, basically these platforms, as you can see here in the top picture, and people can move along these platforms and read more about the measurements that they can take and so on. So specifically, visitors can contribute on measuring water table depths, soil temperatures across the seasons, and flora and fauna presence by taking some pictures and changes in the vegetation and landscape color. How are the data collected? Also in this case, there are some signs with QR codes which link directly to the project website, and observations are also uploaded in real time to a central database. Here you see a screenshot to the right of the data set, which is also publicly available on our project website under the citizen science page. You can see that typically we have the date for the observation. We collect the age of the participant also to have some information about which group we are engaging with. And then some weather conditions and the different tabs for the different measurements. We have still not implemented the measurements for the gas emissions because of some challenges in creating some relatively cheap and user-friendly chamber for doing that. What is the added value is in this way we can increase the spatial and temporal monitoring coverage, and also support research on ecological changes and restoration outcomes. Last but not least, we make the visitors feel more connected to the science of peatland recovery. Yeah, what is the key message here? The key message is to try to involve in wetland restoration the citizens as much as possible and move from simple add-on to create an essential infrastructure. So if you use correctly citizen science, we can treat this as actually as a core monitoring infrastructure, not simple outreach. And it's important, of course, to integrate then this citizen-generated data into restoration planning and reporting, also national inventories. But there are, of course, challenges. Among these, we clearly see some challenges in defining some clear protocols and also some define frameworks which are currently missing, and also provide at the same time some feedback for the volunteers, which are actually those in action out at the sites. The outcome, so it's that we could obtain longer term monitoring, which is currently missing, and more resilient and adaptive wetland restoration. And finally, we can also create a stronger link between science, policy, and society. And with this last slide, I thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Lorenzo, for your presentation. Now, if you have some questions for Lorenzo, you can write them down in the chat. I will go ahead and ask you one. So Lorenzo, I wanted to know what institutional changes are needed for this citizen-generated data to inform restoration decisions.
Yeah, I think the first important step would be to recognize the validity of this data, and then make sure that actually this data can be used, can be integrated into reporting or also decision support systems or national inventories. So I think this is the main change, and of course, we need to the institution needs also to give more visibility to citizen science and more value to citizen science, also simply in terms of funding opportunities for coordination or for training, because sometimes the activities are not so straightforward. So it's good to support this.
Maria, are you with us?
Yes, I think so.
Good.
My connection is, I'm having some issues right now. Can you hear me?
Yes, all is fine.
Yes, we can.
Okay, perfect. Sorry, I missed the last part, but I see that we have another question for Lorenzo. They're asking what is the user feedback on the methods and offerings?
Well, we have met a few visitors at the platforms because we go there once in a while to check if the equipment is properly working, and they are actually quite enthusiastic. And here in Denmark, people, the public is generally likes to be involved in this type of activity. And Lilleville Moos, anyway, it's a special place because it's a place where people can experience a lot of nature. So I think already this brings in people who are keen on contributing somehow. And the fact of reading more about a big project that is running across different countries, and that they can potentially contribute, or at least this could be a pilot idea that can be upscaled and used in other situations in other countries. I think makes them feel very proud. So I think that the feedback I received so far has been very positive.
Okay. Thank you, Lorenzo. I think there are no more questions for Lorenzo in the chat, but we had a few questions that they were asked to the other speakers. So Annika and Patrick, are you there? Okay.
Yes.
Perfect. So there was a question for Annika before. They're asking that in Germany, they often see a discrepancy between the desire for climate protection, for example, and the actual willingness to change something. Not in my backyard effect. Have you observed something similar? Were the impacts of the restoration discussed in the survey?
Yes, that's a fair concern. The gap between what people say in surveys and what they would actually be willing to do in practice. So that's hypothetical bias, and that's well known in this type of research. It's present in all stated preference methods, including choice experiments, and it cannot be fully eliminated. In our survey, the ecological restoration process was described, but we didn't go into great detail about all possible impacts. So the restoration was presented as being targeted to the least productive areas and as something that would aim to minimize negative effects on other livelihoods. And if respondents don't own wetlands or land that could be affected, it's naturally easier for them to say they support restoration because it doesn't directly affect them. But this hypothetical bias doesn't invalidate the results. It more like affects the interpretation. And the values we get from choice experiment should be seen more like indicative estimates of societal preferences rather than precise prediction of what people would do in real life. So despite this limitation, stated preference methods are often the only way to get an estimate, like any estimate of all the benefits of environmental restoration. So from a policy point of view, having at least some estimate is generally better than having like no information and or just like assuming that the value is zero. So I hope that helps.
Thank you for answering. There's another question. I'm not sure. I think it's for Patrick, but I think you can all address this one. They asked how important is ground truthing in wetland ecosystem restoration? I think this one is for Patrick, but if you can all answer, I think it's quite a general question.
Can you repeat the question again? The question, Maria? Sorry.
Sorry. They're asking how important is ground truthing in wetland ecosystem restoration?
What is meant by ground truthing? Maybe you can expand a little bit on that.
I'm not quite sure. The question is made by Joe. So Joe, if you can further explain what this term is. And in any case, we can maybe continue because we are a bit short on time. So I think I have the control here. Okay, so our colleague Irina is going to talk a little bit about the feedback questionnaire. So Irina, you can go ahead.
Thank you. First of all, I would like to say thank you to all our speakers. We see that this topic is really important, and maybe we will consider of more of such sessions and also maybe in the field. For example, in ALFAwetlands, we are using such element as open labs, and we are connected with our stakeholders and with our citizens in field in different countries. But since we are running out of time, I just would like to ask a little bit of your time after this webinar is over to answer to three very short questions. Did you like the webinar? Would you like to join for the next time? And what is, on your opinion, the most important impact on wetlands restoration? So once the webinar is over, just please take time to answer three questions, which are really important for us. And one more comment that these webinars are organized in collaboration with the European chapter of the Society of Wetland Scientists. And together with them, we are considering the topics which you proposed for the next webinar sessions together with our sister projects. And we already addressing two of them, and Maria will tell in a minute about that. Thank you.
Thank you, Irina. Okay, so I take this occasion to advertise our next session, as Irina says. Our next session of the webinar series will be held in January 13th at the same time from 11 to 12. And this time the webinar will be about data-driven wetland monitoring. Registrations are currently open. My colleague Irina is going to write down the registration link for you in the chat so you can register directly by using this link. If not, all the sister projects will promote the webinar in their social media and also in their website. So make sure you follow us and stay tuned for all these links. So I would like to say thank you to our wonderful speakers of today. Thank you very much for your insights and sharing your work with us. Thank you also to the audience and my colleagues from the sister projects, Irina, Lena, Corina, and Madeira. Thank you again. And you have the registration link in the chat. So do not hesitate to directly register here. We hope you enjoyed the session. Thank you very much. We wish you very nice holidays and see you in the next webinar in January. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you.